بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. In this lesson we're going to begin الدرس الرابع, the fourth lesson. But before we read the passage from the lesson, we're going to explain some of the main concepts that we're going to be covering in this lesson inshallah. So in this lesson the author is going to mention some of the mushtaqat. But before we explain the mushtaqat, it's important that we understand the categorization that's involved here. And this is a categorization related to the ism. Al-ism can be categorized in many ways, and we have spoken about some of the different categories previously. But this categorization here, this is a new categorization that we're going to be explaining. And this is in terms of whether this word has been extracted or derived from a previous word or not. So if the word was not derived from a previous word, the Arabs spoke with this word initially without deriving it from another word, this is the primary word that was uttered by the Arabs, then it is going to be known as jamid. The word is jamid. So ism, jamid. And if the noun was extracted from a different word, it was derived from a different word, so it's not a primary word, but it's a word that has been derived from a primary word, a word that came before it, then it's going to be known as mushtaq. Mushtaqun. Mushtaqun. So we have jamidun and we have mushtaqun, two categories. So jamid, when the scholars speak about jamid, they usually mention two matters. The first one is masadir. Masadir is the plural of masdar, right? Al-masadir. Masdar, we've already mentioned this previously. This is the verb or noun, like kitaba, dhahab, ikram, mashi, and so on. Walking, talking, eating, drinking, honoring, and so on. These are verb or nouns. These are known as al-masadir. And then we have something else which is known as ismu dhat. Ismu dhatin. Ismu dhatin is a noun which denotes a physical being, like rajulun, for example, imra'atun, shamsun, qamarun, and so on. These words denote a physical being, and these words likewise they are jamid. The difference between these two is that these are physical beings, whereas these ones are meanings, ma'ani. Ism ma'na, ism dhat. That's how it's generally categorized. Ismu ma'na and ismu dhat. So the words on this side, they are primary words. We could call them primary words or words which have not been derived from other words. Whereas the words on this side, mushtaq, are ones which have been derived from other words. And these mushtaqat, the plural of mushtaq is mushtaqat. Mushtaqat, or let me say al-mushtaqat. Al-mushtaqat are 10 in total. So I'm going to say al-mushtaqatul ashara. Al-mushtaqatul ashara. And all of these 10 are taken from the masdar. They are taken from the masdar. So this masdar is the primary word from which these 10 mushtaqat are derived from. Okay, so if we have al-masdar, this is going to be the source from which we're going to derive the mushtaqat. These mushtaqat, 3 of them are verbs. So we have madi, mudari', amr. These are mushtaqat, derivatives. We have 3 verbs which are derived from the masdar, and then we have 7 nouns. From these are what we're going to be studying in this lesson inshallah, ismu fa'il, something which is called ismu fa'il, which we're going to explain shortly inshallah. And then we have ismu maf'ul. Ismu maf'ul also we're going to explain in this lesson. These two are going to be covered in this lesson inshallah. Then we have ism at-tafdil. Ismu at-tafdil, which we should already know. Muhammad akbaru min Ahmed. Muhammad is bigger than, smaller than, taller than, and so on. It comes on the scale of af'al. We also have الصفة المشبهة. الصفة المشبهة. الصفة المشبهة. This is also from the words that can be derived, or words which are derived. And then we have اسم الزمان, and we also have اسم المكان, and we also have اسم الآلة. So we have in total 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mushtaqat. And all of these mushtaqat, words which have been derived from other words. And the root and the source is the mastar. The mastar is jamid. This is a word that's a primary word that was not derived. The Arabs spoke with this initially. So we said we're going to cover Ismul Fa'il and Ismul Maf'ul in this lesson. Madi, Mudari, Amr, and Ismul Tafdil, we should be aware of these generally. We should have some awareness. طيب. So Ismul Fa'il is what we're going to be covering, and Ismul Maf'ul بإذن in this class. So let's start with Ismul Fa'il. Ismul Fa'il. What is Ismul Fa'il? Firstly, it's a ism. It's a ism, and it indicates fa'il. So when we say ism, it's not going to be a fi'l, and it's not going to be a harf. And when we say fa'il, fa'il is a dua. Dua. Dua is the person or the something that is going to perform an action. So if they are going to enact something and do something, there must be an action that's going to be done, which is the fi'l action. So dua does something, right? So we have the fa'il is the person who is going to do something. So the fa'il, this noun, indicates two things. It indicates the person who's doing the action, and it also indicates the action that's being done. So if I give you an example, if I said katib, for example, katib means a writer, someone who writes. Someone who writes indicates the person who does this action, and indicates the action of writing. طيب. It has those two meanings in this word. Okay. Sometimes when you're given a word from the mastar, you can extract many of these al-mushtaqat. From that same word, you can have madi, mudari, amr, ism fa'il, maf'ul, and to the end. And some, you cannot do it. This is not something which is possible for every word. So I'll give you an example, which is a good example. The word al-la'ib. Al-la'ib is the mastar. Let me use a different pen. So the mastar is al-la'ib. Al-la'ibu. Al-la'ibu means to play, playing. طيب. From al-la'ib we have la'iba, madi. From this we extract mudari, yal'abu. From this we extract the amr, il'ab. So that's the madi, that's the mudari, that's the amr. Ismul fa'il is the person who's going to undertake this action of playing. The person who undertakes this action of playing, we're going to learn if the verb is a three-lettered verb, thulathi, 1, 2, 3, three-lettered, it comes on this pattern, fa'ilun. You put it on this pattern, and once you put it on this pattern, it gives you the ismul fa'il. So lam is fa'ul kalima, alif is an additional letter, ayn is the aynul kalima in the word. Ayn is the aynul kalima, and lam is the ba, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say la, and then we add the alif, and then the ayn, it should be fa'ilun. طيب. The ayn takes a kasra, la'i, and then bun, tanween, because it's a ism. La'ibun, we've constructed the ismul fa'il by placing it on this wazn. If it was kataba, katibun. If it was raka'a, raki'un. If it was sajada, sajidun. If it was sami'a, sami'un. If it was daraba, daribun, to the end. So this is how we derive the ismul fa'il if it's a three-lettered verb. If it's a three-lettered verb, we derive it by putting it on this scale, and it gives us the ismul fa'il, the dua of this action. So this is a noun. This noun indicates a person who does this action. So it has these two meanings within it. So that's the ismul fa'il. So ismul fa'il is la'ibun. And also we're going to learn ismul maf'ul. Ismul maf'ul is from the derivatives. So ism tells us once again it's not going to be a fi'l, and it's not going to be a harf. Rather, it's going to be a ism. And the maf'ul, likewise, indicates two things. It's going to indicate the fi'l, the action is done, but it's not going to indicate the doer of the action, but rather the recipient, the object of the action, the one on the receiving end. So it has two meanings, just like the fa'il has two meanings included in the word. Likewise, the ism al-maf'ul has two meanings included in the word. It indicates the fi'l, the action that's been done, and who is on the receiving end of this action, who is going to be done on. Whereas this one is who is going to be doing it, who is enacting this action. That's the difference between these two. And just like this one has a scale that you put it on to derive the ism al-fa'il, likewise this one has a scale to derive it. Fa'il, fa'il, maf'ul, maf'ul. That's the scale. Maf'ulun, likewise, because it's an ism. So we take lam, ayn, ba. This meme is additional, so we're going to add it. Whatever is additional, we add it. And we have to also make sure that the harakat, once we've placed the letters, we have to make sure that it matches with the vowels. Fa has a fatha, ayn has a kasra, and then tanween. This end letter varies. If you put it in a sentence and it's marfu, it's going to be la'ibun, la'ibin, la'iban, fa'ilun, fa'ilun, and this likewise maf'ulun, maf'ulun, maf'ulun. It's going to vary. طيب. So we have ma is additional. Fa'ul kalima, we take it from the letter. So mal, mal. Ayn is the ayn al-kalima. So mal, ru. The waw is additional, so we add it. Lamul kalima in our word is ba. Mal'ubun. Mal'ub. So we've managed to get madi, mudari, amr, ismul fa'il. We've got ismul maf'ul. So mal'ub means the one who was played with, or the thing that was played with. Mal'ubun bihi. You usually add bihi. Mal'ubun bihi. Something that was played with, or someone that was played with. So we have ismul fa'il, ismul maf'ul. Ismul tafdil. This is when you put it on the scale of af'al. We should already know this. And af'alu is mamnu' min as-sarf. This particular scale is mamnu' min as-sarf. These ones are not. So it will be hamza is additional. So we say a, fa is lamul kalima, al, ayn is the ayn, and the lamul kalima is the ba. Al-abu. Al-abu. Al-ab means more playful or plays more than someone. So Ahmad al-ab min Muhammad. Al-ab min Muhammad. He is more, it's a comparative degree. So ismu tafdil is that. Sifa mushabbaha is similar to ismul fa'il, except that sifa mushabbaha indicates a characteristic or a trait that's innate, that is more long-lasting and more permanent than ismul fa'il. Ismul fa'il indicates a characteristic that comes and goes. It's not always there. Like katibun, someone who is writing, is not always going to be constantly writing. He's going to sleep, he's going to take a rest. The person who talks, the person who runs, the person who walks, the person who eats is not going to be constantly doing these actions. So these are not innate characteristics. So that's why they're ismul fa'il. Whereas sifa mushabbaha is characteristics which are innate, like generosity, bravery, colors of things. They are referred to as sifa mushabbaha. طيب. So if someone has an innate characteristic of being playful, we would not say la'ibun. La'ibun is someone who plays and he takes a rest and he stops. But if we're talking about his characteristic, this person is playful, we could say la'ibun. La'ibun. And there's also another scale where we could say la'ibun. Rajulun la'ib shows that this is a characteristic, an innate characteristic of this person. Ismul makan and ismul zaman are very similar. Ismul makan indicates the place where this action takes place. And this zaman indicates the time where this action takes place. Mal'ab is a playground, place where people perform this action. Playground. Ismul zaman, the time where playing takes place, also mal'ab. Ismul zaman and ismul makan, they come on the same scale. How do we differentiate between the two? Context. Ismul ala, ala basically is an instrument, a tool that's used to perform this action. So here it's referring to toys. Toys, something that you play with. We say lu'ba. Lu'batun. Lu'batun is a toy. So see how we've derived 10 different words, derivatives, mushtaqat, from al-la'ib, from one word. This is the source primary word, which was a mastar, jamid. This is the word that the Arabs pronounced initially. It was not taken from anything else. Whereas these other ones were taken from this. Hence they are mushtaqat. Okay. So here, alhamdulillah, we've explained the ismul fa'il, how to derive the ismul fa'il, which is very simple. If it's ismul fa'il, you put it on the scale of fa'ilun. If it's ismul maf'ul, you put it on the scale maf'ulun. However, these two scales are only applicable if you are deriving from a three-lettered verb. If it's a three-lettered verb you're dealing with, like la'iba, kataba, daraba, and so on, you put it on fa'ilun to get the ismul fa'il, or maf'ulun to get the ismul maf'ul. Okay, so what if it's more than three letters? What if it's a four-lettered word, or five-lettered verb, or six-lettered verb? Because that's the max. 4, 5, 6. If it's four-lettered rubai, five-lettered khumasi, or six-lettered sudasi verbs, the rule is very simple. The rule is you take it from the mudari' of that particular verb. So if we had akrama, now I'll give you an example with akrama. Akrama is a four-lettered verb. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the madi. I'll give you a five-lettered verb. Let's say takabbara. This is 1, 2. The ba represents 2. That's 3, 4, 5. So five-lettered. A six-lettered verb is taghfara. So we have four-lettered, five-lettered, six-lettered. So how do we get ismul fa'il from these, and how do we get ismul maf'ul from these? The rule states that you have to take it from the mudari'. So akrama, the mudari' is yukrimu. You have to go to the mudari'. That's the step one. Step one, you need to transfer it to the mudari' forms. That's why we're going to derive the ismul fa'il and the ismul maf'ul from the mudari' forms. Takabbara, yatakabbaru. يتكبر. استغفر يستغفر. يستغفر. Okay, step one, derive the mudari'. Once you've derived the mudari', step two, and this is for ismul fa'il and ismul maf'ul also. We're going to replace the harful mudara'. This harful mudara', because the fi'l mudari' starts with a harf mudara', right? We replace it with a meme, which has a dhamma. Replace the harful mudara', the first letter of the fi'l mudari', with a meme that has a dhamma. Both of them have tanween. For ismul fa'il, the only difference is the second last letter is going to take a kasra. Everything else remains the same except the second last letter. So mukrimun, mutakabbirun, mustaghfirun. That's how you create the ismul fa'il. You replace the harf al-mudara' with the meme with the dhamma once you've derived the mudari', and then you replace the second last letter with a kasra. So mukrimun, mutakabbirun, mustaghfirun. Akrama means to honor. Mukrimun is the person who honors. Takabbara is to be haughty or arrogant. Mutakabbir is the one who is haughty and arrogant. Istaghfara, to seek forgiveness. Mustaghfir is the one who seeks forgiveness. So this is how we derive the ismul fa'il. How do we derive the ismul maf'ul? The ismul maf'ul, same process. Just to make it easier, we could say you take it from the fi'l mudari'. Really and truly, we take it from the fi'l mudari', which is mabni al-majhul. Yeah, so instead of yukrimu, it's yukramu. Yatakabbaru, yutakabbaru, yustaghfaru. But whether you want to say it's taken from the fi'l mudari', which is mabni al-majhul, or mabni al-ma'lum, it doesn't make a big difference, because the end result is going to be the same. So the second step is going to be the same. We give it a meme with a dhamma. Meme with a dhamma, meme with dhamma. All the harakat remain the same. But rather than giving the second last letter a kasra, for the maf'ul, we give the second last letter a fatha. So we'd say mukramun. Instead of mukrimun, we say mukramun. Instead of mutakabbirun, we say mutakabbarun. Mutakabbarun. Instead of mustaghfirun, we say mustaghfarun. This is ismul maf'ul, and this is ismul fa'il. Mukrim, the person who honors. Mukram is the one that was honored. Mutakabbir, the one who is arrogant. Mutakabbar is the one that is shown arrogance. Mustaghfir, Mustaghfar is the one who is forgiveness is sought from. The one who the forgiveness is sought from. So sometimes it doesn't really make sense to have ismul maf'ul for some of these things, but this is just examples. As we said, you can't derive all of the mushtaqat, it's not possible. So mutakabbar, something that you are arrogant from, and I don't know if that really makes sense, but this is just to help you to construct the ismul fa'il and ismul maf'ul. So simple steps. You go to the mudari. Once you're able to derive the mudari, which is something that is taught to you in Sarf Book 1, then you replace the harf al-mudari with a mim with a dhamma, and you do this for both the fa'il and the ism al-maf'ul, and every harakah stays the same, except that the second last letter, if it's a ism al-fa'il, you give it a kasra, and if it's ism al-maf'ul, you give it a dhamma. When do you do this? You do this for the 4-lettered, 5-lettered, 6-lettered verbs. If it's a 3-lettered verb you're dealing with, you put it on this scale for fa'il, and you put it on this scale for ism al-maf'ul. طيب. So this is basically the lesson. So if we've understood this, then we can read today's lesson. This is the lesson, a conversation between the teacher and some of the students. Al-Bara says, نريد أن نعرف نتيجة الاختبار الشهري يا أستاذ. نريد أن نعرف. We want to know. نتيجة is the result. Al-Ikhtibar, the result of the exam. الشهري. Shahr means month. Now they've added ya on nisbah. Now it becomes like a na'at, shahri. So this is what we explained last lesson, where you can take a normal word and turn it into an adjective by adding ya on nasab to the end. So shahri is monthly. نريد أن نعرف نتيجة الاختبار الشهري يا أستاذ. We want to know the result of the monthly exam or teacher. Al-Harith, he says, كم راسبا في فصلنا يا أستاذ. How many rasib? Rasib is the ismul fa'il from rasaba. Rasaba yarsubu. Rasaba yarsubu is to fail. The person who fails, we put it on the scale of fa'il, and it becomes rasib. How many people have failed in our class, O Ustad? Al-Mudarris says, كلكم ناجح والحمد لله. All of you are najih. This comes from najaha. Najaha, to succeed, to pass. The ismul fa'il najaha, we put it on fa'il. Fa'il becomes najih. All of you are successful, alhamdulillah. Kullukum najih. Every one of you is a najih, is one who has succeeded or passed in the exam. All praise belongs to Allah. Khalid says, Nahnu masrurun. We are very happy. We are very happy. So masrurun comes from sarra. Sarra yasurru. Sarra yasurru is the madi and the mudari, which means to be happy, to rejoice. And then we put it on this scale, maf'ul, masrur. We have become happy now at this news that they have passed. So this is maf'ul. And what's masrurun? Masrurun is basically the plural. Masrur is one person. طيب. I forgot to explain. With the fa'il, so once we have fa'ilun, this is one person. Fa'il is one doer of an action. And we can get to the dual form and the plural form the same way we make it muthanna. So fa'ilan. So if it's la'ibun, for example, we have la'ibani, fa'ilani, la'ibuna, fa'iluna. This is the tasrif. And if we want to make this feminine, we say fa'ilatun, la'ibah, la'ibatun. What's a la'ibah? It's a female player. Fa'ilatani. From here, ta, we add alif and nun. Fa'ilatani. And then plural, fa'ilatun. Fa'ilatun. This is the standard. You can apply this to get 6 different words. Fa'ilun, fa'ilani, fa'ilun. Fa'ilatun, fa'ilatani, fa'ilatun. And we can do that for katibun, katibani, katibuna, katibatun, katibatani, katibatun. See how it's important that you understand. This is from sarf. See, from sarf you can derive 6 different words to indicate 6 different things. This is one, this is two, this is a group. This is one, this is two, this is a group. But this is feminine, this is masculine. And we can do the same with the maf'ul as well, ismul maf'ul. So we have maf'ulun, which is masrurun. Maf'ulun, ana masrur, I am happy. Maf'ulani. No, maf'ulani. This is ayn and then waw. Maf'ulani. And then the plural, same thing, we add waw and nun, jam' mudhakkar salim, maf'uluna. Maf'uluna. Masruruna. Feminine, who has been something at the receiving end of an action, maf'ulatun. Madruba, for example. Madrub, the one who was beaten. Madruba, a female who was beaten. Maf'ulatun. And then maf'ulatani. And then maf'ulatun. Maf'ulatun. Madrubatun. Okay, so masruruna is this. Ismul maf'ul, the plural form. Yeah, so write this down inshallah and memorize this. Memorize this, how it's changing. So it's basically muthanna, and then we have jam' mudhakkar salim and jam' muannath salim. Things which you should already know. But now it's being implemented with the ismul fa'il, ism maf'ul. It's all in one place. It makes things easier to understand now. So we have نحن مسرورون, we are delighted. We are delighted. هل من راسب في الفصول الأخرى, are there any people who have failed in the other classes? So هل من here is coming as زائدة. من is زائدة. We explained the conditions for using من as زائدة. طيب. So راسب is اسم الفاعل once again. في الفصول, فصول is plural. We said أخرى, we treat it as one feminine. Okay. Are there anyone who has failed in the other classrooms? نعم, yes. ولكن الراسبين قليلون. However, the people who have failed are few in number. راسب, we have pluralized it. راسب, راسبان, راسبون. جمع مذكر سالم. جمع مذكر سالم, when it is majrur or when it is mansub, we have a ya. So here is coming as اسم لكن منصوب. قليلون خبر لكن مرفوع. Right? لكن is from the sisters of inna. It makes the ism mansub and the khabar مرفوع. قليلون. لكن الراسبين قليلون. However, the failures or those who have failed are few in number. من كاتب هذا على السبورة. من كاتب. كاتب is the اسم الفاعل from كتب. كتب يكتب. We put it on the scale of فاعل, it becomes كاتب. The reason why it doesn't have the matin is because this is مضاف مضاف إليه. من كاتب هذا. Who is the writer of this on the board? Who wrote this on the board? كاتب هذا is the same as saying من كتب هذا. Who wrote this on the board? Hamid says ما ندري. ما ندري, we do not know. وجدناه مكتوبا عندما دخلنا الفصل. عندما دخلنا الفصل. وجدناه, we found it. We found it, whatever was written on the board. مكتوبا. وجدناه مكتوبا. We found it written. عندما, when دخلنا الفصل, when we entered the classroom. The word وجد here, we see that it has a فاعل and it has a مفعول به. This ضمير مفعول به that's attached to it. طيب. So this is a مفعول به that's attached to it, and مكتوبا likewise is another مفعول. So what we need to know is some verbs, the verbs which are متعدي, the ones that require مفعول, some of them require one مفعول. Most of these متعدي verbs fall into this category where they only require one, and some of them require two, like this one requires two, and similar. جزاك الله خيرا. Ka is the first مفعول, and then خيرا is the second مفعول. Likewise here, ha, this ha is the first مفعول, and مكتوبا is the second مفعول. And some verbs, they require three, and that's the maximum. Some verbs, they require three مفعوls. Rather than just sufficing with one and sufficing with two, it requires three. It has to have three مفعوls. Like for example, the word أعلم. For example, أعلمت زيدا الدرس سهلا. I made Zaid know that the class is easy. So here we have يترك الفصل مفتوحا. يترك الفصل مفتوحا. the classroom is left open. فيدخله طلاب من جهات مختلفة. As a result, students from various walks or various directions, they enter. Jiha is direction. Here I think it refers to not necessarily directions, but different types of people, yani, rather than direction, but different kinds. مختلفة, different kinds of students enter. يترك الفصل مفتوحا فيدخله طلاب من جهات مختلفة. يترك, so this is فعل مضارع مبني للمجهول. الفصل نائب الفاعل. مفتوحا مفعول به. مفتوح, مفتوح is on the wazn of مفعول. Something which is opened is اسم المفعول. مفتوح from فتح يفتح. فيدخل طلاب من جهات مختلفة. طيب, what we need to explain, what we mentioned about some fi'ls, they only require one maf'ul and some require two maf'ul. This is where we'll explain this. Let's just say وجده. وجده, this is the first maf'ul. مكتوبا, this is the second maf'ul. Okay, if we was going to change this fi'l which is mabni al-ma'lum into the fi'l which is mabni al-majhul, what do? We say wujida. Wujida. This now, who, how do we present it as a fa'il? Huwa becomes damir mustatir huwa. The fa'il is hidden. What do we do with maktuban? Maktuban just comes down. So it will be wujida maktuban. Wujida maktuban. So when you see this wujida maktuban, you're going to be thinking, why is this still mansub? This is still mansub because this is maf'ul thani. This is maf'ul awwal, this is maf'ul thani. The maf'ul awwal is the one that's going to be changed into naib fa'il, which it has been changed into naib fa'il and we can't really see it. We don't see it, it's damir mustatir. Maktuban is not affected, so it remains maf'ulun bihi. This becomes maf'ulun bihi awwal now in this sentence. There's no maf'ulun bihi awwal, right? The maf'ul awwal turned into naib fa'il. Maf'ul thani becomes maf'ul awwal. And if we had maf'ul thalith, it will become maf'ul thani. Like what I said with a'lama, the verb that has three maf'ulun bihi. A'lama or a'lamtu. Let's say a'lamtu, so that's the fa'il. The first maf'ul, zaydan. A'lamtu zaydan ad-darsa sahlan. I made Zayd know that the lesson is easy. So if I was to change this, I would say u'lima. U'lima Zaydun. So this is going to become, this is maf'ul awwal, maf'ul thani, maf'ul thalith in the original sentence. This is going to become the naib fa'il. This is going to become, ad-darsa remains like that, but it's going to be maf'ul awwal. Sahlan is going to remain the same, but it's going to be maf'ul thani. So u'lima Zaydun ad-darsa sahlan. It was made known to Zayd that the lesson is easy. And the same thing here. This was maf'ul awwal, this was maf'ul thani. Maf'ul awwal became naib fa'il and maf'ul thani became maf'ul awwal. طيب, المدرس says ماذا نعمل? ماذا نعمل? What should we do? فالقفل مكسور. What can we do, or what should we do? The lock, القفل مكسور, is broken. مكسور, you can see it's coming on the scale of مفعول. So مفعول به, it's received the action of breaking. كسر. كسر يكسر. The اسم المفعول from كسر يكسر. يكسر is مكسور. مكسور. The قفل has received this action on it, hence it's مكسور. It's broken now. هل من ذاهب إلى السوق اليوم? Is there anyone going to the market today? Min here is زائدة, likewise. ذاهب is the اسم فاعل from ذهب. ذهب يذهب ذاهب إلى السوق. Is there anyone going to the market today? غالب says أنا ذاهب إن شاء الله. I am going إن شاء الله. The name Hamid, the name Ghalib, likewise they are on the scale of اسم فاعل. اسم فاعل. However, these are names, yeah? These are names of people. Likewise, مدرس. مدرس comes from darrasa, and we explained that the ones which are rubai, we take it from the mudari. So darrasa yudarrisu. Yudarrisu, we change the you into a meme. Mudarrisu. Mudarrisun is ism fa'il, the person who teaches. Muallimun, likewise ismul fa'il, the one who teaches. Al-Mudarris says, أرجو أن تشتري قفلا جيدا. I hope that you buy a قفلا, a lock that is good, a good lock. غالب إن شاء الله. المدرس اقرأ الآية التقاء ساكنين اقرأ الآية الواردة في الدرس يا عارف. عارف, likewise this name is on the scale of فاعل, اسم فاعل. Read the ayah واردة which was mentioned في الدرس, in the lesson, يا عارف or عارف. عارف says أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We mentioned previously that it's not necessary when you're quoting ayat to say the isti'adha and the basmala. This is something that's required for you to do when you're reciting the Quran. But if you're quoting, then you can just quote the ayah. It's not something which was established from the Prophet ﷺ. As we mentioned in his khutbatul hajj, when he begins his khutbah, he would say, Inna alhamdulillah, and then he would recite the 3 ayat which begin with Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullah, ya nasu ittaqullah, without saying A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Okay, so the ayah he's reading is going to contain ismul fa'il. So here we have was-sariqu. Sariqu come from saraqa yasriqu, the person who steals. Sariq. The feminine version, remember we said we can do the tasrif. Sariq, sariqani, sariquna. Sariqatun. Sariqatun. It doesn't have tanween because it has al now. As-sariqatu. Sariqatani, sariqatun. Okay. Was-sariqu was-sariqatu faqta'u aydiyahuma jaza'an bima kasaba. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, as for the male and female thieves, فَقْطَعُوا أَيْدِيَهُمَا, cut off their hands, جَزَاءً, as a recompense, بِمَا كَسَبَا, for what they did, as a punishment for what they did. So here we have سَارِقُ, سَارِقَةُ. Both of these are ismul fa'il, masculine, feminine. Then the mudarris, he says, مَا شاء الله إِنَّكَ قَارِئٌ جَيِّد. You are a good reader. قَارِئٌ ismul fa'il, from قَرَأَ, to read. قَارِئ. Qari'. This hamza is not supposed to be on its own, rather it's supposed to be written on top of there, like this. It should be like this. I don't know why it's like that. Qari'un. Qari'un, you are a good reader. Lam asma', it's going to be sakin because lam is jazima, makes it majzoom. Lam asma'ka, lam asma'ka, I did not hear you. Taqra'u al-Qur'ana min qabl. Lam asma'ka taqra'u al-Qur'ana min qablu. I did not hear you reading the Quran before. Ahafidhun anta, are you one who has memorized the Quran? Hafidh is from hafidha. Hafidha, to memorize, to preserve. The ismul fa'il, hafidhun. Hafidhun. Are you one who has memorized the Quran? Arif says, Na'am, yes. Al-Mudarris, Ma ana bighafilin amma ta'malu ya Mansur. So the teacher now, he begins to speak about Mansur. He's doing something in the background. Ma ana bighafilin. I am not ghafil, unaware. Ghafala, yaghfulu. The ismul fa'il, ghafil. I am not unaware. Amma ta'malu, concerning that which you are doing, O Mansur. Mansur is the name of the person. And if you pay a closer look, you see that this comes on the scale of maf'ul. Maf'ul, the person's name, maf'ul, Mansur. Mansur means someone who is victorious. Mansur. Okay. Here we learn a new concept. And this new concept is this ma, a different type of ma. This ma is called ma al-hijaziyya. Ma al-hijaziyya. The reason why it's called hijaziyya is because Hijaz, which is Mecca and Medina, this area, this particular Arabs from this area, they used to use this ma in a certain way. They used it for the same meaning and the same function as laysa. So you can replace laysa and ma, it will give you the same thing. Obviously, if you replace it with laysa, then the anna is going to be a lastu. It changes and so on. Laysa is a fi'l, whereas ma is a harf. So this is a harf. This ma means the same thing as laysa in terms of it negates, and it has the same grammatical function in that laysa is from the sisters of kana, right? So it makes the ism marfu and the khabar mansub. Yeah, but we didn't say it does the same job as kana. We said it does the same job as laysa because it's closer to laysa. It has more connection to laysa in that it has the same meaning and it operates in the similar way where you add the additional ba. Remember, laysa bi jayyid, laysa bi talib. You can say ليس طالبا, ليس محمد طالبا, or you can say ليس محمد بطالب. Likewise, you do the same thing with ma. So ma here is called ma al-hijaziyya. It's a harf which does the same job as laysa, where it negates, and grammatically as well, it's going to make the ism marfu and the khabar mansub, and the ism is going to be ismu laysa. Khabar is going to be khabar laysa. So ana is ismu ma, and ghafilin is khabaru ma mansub wa alamatu nasbi al-fatha al-muqaddara. We estimate it because here the harf jar za'idah makes it majroor lafdan. The pronunciation is majroor, but it's actually mansub ismu ma. If we took off the ba, it would be ma ana ghafilan. I am not unaware. I am not negligent. I am not heedless. Amma ta'malu ya Mansur, concerning that which you are doing, O Mansur. Mansur says, Arju an tasmaha li bil khuruji. I request that you allow me to exit. فإني أريد أن أذهب إلى الناسخ, because I want to go to the nasikh. Nasikh is the ismul fa'il from nasakha yansakhu. Nasakha yansakhu means to copy. So the person who copies is nasikh, the person who runs the photocopy machine. I want to go to that person. So it seems like he was leaving without permission. Al-mudarris la asmahu laka bidhalik. I do not permit you with that, or I do not allow you to do so. ألا تعرف أن الخروج في أثناء الدرس ممنوع? Don't you know that exiting or leaving في أثناء during the dars is ممنوع, is prohibited. ممنوع comes from منع. This is the اسم المفعول from منع يمنع, to prevent. ممنوع, prevented, prohibited. طيب. Mansoor says أنا آسف يا أستاذ. I am sorry, O teacher. آسف is اسم الفاعل from asifa. Asifa ya'safu. Asifa ya'safu is to be sorry, to be regretful. Asifun. When the hamza, if it's a mahmuz, the fa'ul kalim is a hamza and is followed by an alif, we write it like this, right? We write it like this. And the same for akhidun, akilun. If the fa'ul kalim is a hamza and we put it on the ismul fa'il, this is how it's going to be written. So this represents hamza and alif. But rather than writing separately, write it together. آسف. I am sorry, O teacher. المدرس أتذكر الحديث الوارد في الدرس السابق? Do you remember the hadith that was mentioned or covered in the previous lesson? This is not for this. سابق comes from سبق يسبق. سبق, to precede. Someone who precedes or something which precedes, اسم الفاعل سابق. سابق فاعل. The lesson which preceded. Mansoor says نعم, yes. عن سهل بن سعد عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. On the authority of Sahl ibn Sa'd, that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, قال أنا وكافل اليتيم في الجنة هكذا. I and the one, كافل comes from كفل يكفل. كفل يكفل is to take care of, to be responsible over. I and the one who is responsible over, the one who takes care of the yatim. Yatim is the orphan. And the scholars, they mention that yatim applies to a child whose father dies before they reach the age of adulthood. So anyone whose father dies while they are still young, then this child is yatim, specifically the father. As for the one whose father is alive and then the mother dies while they are young, they are not called yatim. Likewise, it has to be specifically during childhood, before they reach puberty. So if we have a 20-year-old whose father dies, we don't refer to him as being yatim because he's reached the age of adulthood. So anyone whose father dies prior to being an adult, they are considered to be yatim. So the Prophet ﷺ here is saying, me and the one who looks after the yatim, fil jannati hakadha, will be in Jannah like this. وأشار بالسبابة والوسطى, and he indicated with his sababa, which is this finger, the index finger, and the wusta, which is the middle finger. He indicated with these two fingers, وفرج بينهما, and he separated between the two. He did this, meaning we're going to be in Jannah together, as some of the scholars have explained, but not going to be on the same level. This is the separation between the two indicates that we're not going to be in the same level. The Prophet ﷺ, of course, is going to be of a higher level than the kafir yatim, but the fact that he chose these two fingers which are next to each other shows that they're going to be near the Prophet ﷺ because of doing such an act, taking care of the yatim, the orphan. This is an encouragement from the Prophet ﷺ that we look after the yatim. Whoever has the ability to sponsor a yatim should do so. And if you're going to sponsor a yatim, then do so directly. Get in contact with the yatim or those who are responsible over the yatim from their family members, and perhaps sponsor them by sending them whatever they require on a monthly basis, yearly basis, and so on. Don't do it through charity organizations, because if you do it through charity organizations, you don't really have a guarantee if that money is going to reach them. And if it does reach them, the charity is going to cut a percentage. So it's not 100% donation policy, as some would lead you to believe. Charity organizations, they take a cut. They take a cut from your money, obviously, to run their offices and pay their employees and to pay themselves as well. So if you're going to help people, help them directly if that's possible. If you can't do it directly, then do it through means which are trustworthy and reliable. طيب. متفق عليه. This hadith is agreed upon, reported by Bukhari and Muslim. Al-Mudarris, أحسنت يا منصور. Well done. So Mansur, who the teacher was upset with for trying to leave the lesson without permission, now the teacher is happy with him because he remembers the hadith from the previous lesson. أحسنت يا منصور. We should try and memorize this hadith and implement it, inshallah. Well done, O Mansur. أرجو أن تكون سامعا للدرس وفاهما له. I hope that you are one who listens to the dars and understands it. سامعا, سامع. Remember, we said we don't concentrate on the fa'ilun because it could be fa'ilun, fa'ilin, fa'ilan. It changes the lamul kalima. However, this is ismul fa'il, from sami'a, to hear. Someone who hears is sami'. Fahima, someone who understands, is fahim. I hope that you are one who sami'an lid-darsi, who listens to the lesson, and fahiman lahu, and one who understands it. Barakallah fikum. This is our lesson. I hope that you can attempt the exercises and the tamareen, inshallah, before next lesson, where we will be covering these tamareen, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.